All right, this guy is originally from Erie, Pennsylvania, but he's not a Steelers fan, all right, which is a little disappointing because then he moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and I know we got some Clevelanders here. So he's a diehard Clevelander, and I first met him, and by the way, he flew in today from Cleveland, Ohio. This is Craig Coffey, all right? This is Craig Coffey. He flew in today from Cleveland, Ohio. He saw my post last year, and he said, hey, I think I have a pretty good story to tell. Well, we'll probably do this again, you know. And I forgot about it. I posted about a month ago. Boom, get a text from Craig. I'm like, you're really going to fly in for this? He's like, yes. And when I first met him is that we actually met at a marketing and a storytelling conference. Content Marketing World. Any of you guys been there? A wonderful conference. Anyway, that's where we first met. And that's what he does today. He's from Erie. He lives in Cleveland. He knows more about Cleveland than anyone else I know. During the days, he tries to make corporate storytelling more exciting. And he's all about business-to-business marketing. Let's hear it for Craig Coffey.
I do want to correct the record for you, though, George. I believe we met for the first time at the Business Marketing Association Annual Summit in Chicago. Yeah, okay. All right. Storytelling, right? I got a cheat sheet at my feet. That's what I'm dusting down here. So thanks for having me, first of all. So nobody really ever wants to get good at giving eulogies, right, for obvious reasons. But this is a story about a time that I gave a pretty good eulogy, and also for obvious reasons, I hope it's the last time I have to do that. Matt Gillespie was a friend of mine, and his brother was my best friend. We were roommates in college, and I met him in probably 1989 or 90. When I was still in college, he'd come into town, blow in, we'd tear it up. He was a great guy. I could spend hours, literally hours, talking about the stories that I heard about him, the stories we created together. He was a great guy. He was one of the reasons I moved to Cleveland, because when I was in college, I was an English major in college, so I was basically majoring in unemployment. And he said, you know, he ran a mechanical contracting business and said, if you ever come to Cleveland, I got work for you. While you're looking for your college job, there's work to be done in Cleveland. I can always put you to work. So he was one of the reasons, between him and his brother Pat and my best friend Tommy, they all became the reasons I moved to Cleveland. And over time, living in Cleveland, I became kind of a de facto member of the Gillespie family. So Matt passed on Leap Day, February 29th of 2020. After a sudden, but I would say probably not unexpected illness. Long story longer. And when he died, I recognized in his family, in the faces of his family, that no one would be able to do his eulogy. So I volunteered to do it. I also volunteered to do it because I loved Matt, and I loved the idea of being able to make Matt's life mean something through the eulogy that I would give him. Writing is not something that comes terribly hard to me. I'm a content marketer. I write for a living. And I had tons of source material to work from. So, like I said, Matt, the stories we could tell about Matt all day long. You could fill movies after movies with Matt's stories. He collected people. He was a character unto himself. And I'm actually struggling to not tell some Matt stories, but okay, I'll move on. All right, so writing the story was not that tough, but I did take it very seriously, and I took it seriously enough that I actually enlisted my friend Dave Murray, who's actually here in the crowd, who's the editor of Vital Speeches of the Day magazine. So he's a serious editor, to help me kind of so I wrote the draft, he helped me polish it, and between the two of us, I think we came up with what I would consider a very, very good eulogy that really, really memorialized this guy that we love so much who passed too soon. And about 2 days before his funeral. Oh, so one story. So talking about there was tons of source material. One of the things that the family asked me to do, his siblings, his 3 sisters, 2 brothers, they asked me to include a story of their own about Matt, to include in the eulogy, to kind of like illustrate the kind of guy that Matt was. And the one story that really stuck with me was a story about the time their family dog got into the church during Mass. So the story goes, the Gillespies were raised Roman Catholic. They lived about 2 blocks away from the church they went to, which was called St. Luke's the Evangelist Church. It still is called that. It's not gone. The St. Luke's the Evangelist Church, which ironically is the church that his funeral mass will be given at, and also the church that my family goes to, that I belong to, and my kids are part of the parish. Now, this is not the easy breezy Catholic Church of today. This is 1970-ish. The priest is like an authority figure. He's very domineering. And this dog is running around the church and barking in Mass at like noon. And everybody's ignoring it, except for Matt, who just kind of nonchalantly got out of his pew and gathered his dog and left the church. Now, it's probably a little hyperbole, but I think probably with the exception of the occasional funeral or wedding, he probably never went to church after that time. So not a real God-fearing guy. But that story kind of stuck with me. So as I mentioned, his funeral mass was coming up, and about 2 days before the funeral, I was told that we had to give a copy of the eulogy to the priest to review. I'm like, hey, we got an A+ paper here. I'm really not worried about it. And then through the parish secretary, I get some notes back. And the notes really are kind of 2 major areas. The first is I'm not allowed to mention the fact that everybody should come visit Matt. Matt got cremated, so not allowed to visit his ashes at his bar. Matt owned a bar called the Map Room in Cleveland. It's a great little dive bar right near Brown Stadium. And he always said that he wanted to be at his bar so people could come visit him after he passed. So I couldn't include that because apparently in the Catholic Church, after you're cremated, they want you to be in a Catholic cemetery. Stupid rule, whatever. The other edit that I got was the one that really gutted me. It was that the words of remembrance, they don't really use the term eulogy in the Catholic Church. The words of remembrance had to be 3 minutes or less. Now, the eulogy that was written, that I had been practicing ironically, for the last couple days, was running at about 14 minutes. And they're asking me basically to give you the trailer instead of the movie. And I was like, I don't know how to reconcile this, because like as I mentioned, we're parishioners in this church. My kids go to the school and see this priest all the time. I was raised Catholic, so I have this this internal deference to the priest. I also want to mention that this is not Catholic dogma about this 3-minute rule. This is not something that was biblical canon. This is the priest flexing. And I didn't mention earlier, but I don't like this priest. And I'll suffice it to say that he tends to run a little more Republican than I am. Let's just leave it there. But he's got this thing. So I'm reconciling this whole thing in my head, and like, how do I shorten this opus that we had written into that told the story of Matt's life and the way it needed to be told down to a 3-minute commercial about Matt's life. But I did my best, and I cut it back, and then I sheepishly reached out to Dave, and I said, what do you think? He's like, what do I think? He's like, what would Matt do? I'm like, and that stuck with me. So on the morning of his funeral, I'm still, after a very restless night's sleep, it's at the end of the funeral mass, right after the communion and just before the final blessing is when the words of remembrance are supposed to be done. So I get out of my pew and I walk up to the altar and I step up to the lectern, and I could see this priest. He's stage right to me, and this guy who didn't know Matt, had never met Matt, that didn't really know what Matt was all about, And I kind of put that aside, and I stepped up to the lectern, and I looked out as I'm looking out to you guys right now, and I see this group of people who love this guy. And I see in the front row, I see his two daughters and his wife. And I see all his friends, all these characters that he'd collected over his years. And I did the only thing I could do. I did the whole 14 fucking minutes. And during the whole time, as I'm doing this 14-minute eulogy, I'm going through this, and I'm looking at the priest out of the corner of my eye, and I see him looking at his watch, and it's like looking for a hook to pull me off the stage with, and I just kept going out. I was telling the stories, and I was doing the tribute, and I was doing the thing that made this man's life, this man that I love's life, come alive. And I guess the moral of the story is, if you got a good story to tell, don't think something as silly as a time limit is the thing that's going to hold you back from telling the story. So I'd ask you guys all, anybody who has got a glass, to raise a glass to my friend Matt. And this is a contract now. Next time you're in Cleveland, I know it's a destination location, stop by the map room, have a beer with Matt. He'd love to see you. Matt's the one in the middle. Right there, the cigarette. That's Matt.